BBOR, Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. Black Box Ned 88 on Instagram for the bonus podcast. And just a quick reminder, every Monday is Zodiac Mondays, Wednesday is an Ask Me Anything, that's an AMA, so please drop your questions below for things that you would like discussed here on the show, and Friday is an Anything Goes, any subject is fair game, mostly talking about true crime, serial killers, the Zodiac Killer, but any subject is welcome. Alright, so please share some ideas in the comment section about what you would like to hear about on this channel, and let's get started. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Whenever you are listening to this, welcome to Black Box Online Radio. We will be doing the episode a little bit differently today because I had the opportunity to interview Joe, who runs the Zodiac Killer Insights series here on YouTube, and Joe believes that he has identified the Zodiac Killer as Gareth Penn, the author of Time 17 and the Second Power, a researcher who went on to become a suspect himself. And we will play the interview that I did with Joe, where he gives all the reasons about why he thinks that Gareth Penn was the Zodiac Killer. But before that, I will play a phone call that Joe made to Gareth Penn himself, because throughout the interview, Joe and I were heavily referencing that discussion that he had, and I also think that it's a good opportunity to hear what somebody has to say about their own suspect in terms of in the interview format. Like, someone has the opportunity to have a conversation with the person whom they genuinely believe is the Zodiac Killer. We do not have too many occasions like that, especially not when the entirety of the phone call has been recorded and shared online. So we will play the phone call that Joe did with Gareth Penn, then there'll be a small interlude, maybe like a little bit of commentary gap, and then we will play the full interview. Okay, so let's have a listen.
Gareth Penn?
Yes.
I'm the proprietor of the Zodiac Killer Insight series. How are you?
Okay, what are you calling me about?
I want to know if you would like to have a quick chat.
A quick check.
Quick chat. A talk. I'm certain you know about my channel, the Zodiac Killer Insight series.
I'm sorry, I don't understand what you're saying.
I'm saying that I'm calling you, and I'm the proprietor of the YouTube channel, the Zodiac Killer Insight series. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
I would like to know if you'd like to have a quick chat about my channel.
What's a quick check?
A little talk about my channel. I'm pretty sure you know what my channel is all about.
What is your channel?
My channel is a YouTube channel pertaining the Zodiac Killer.
I see.
And in that channel of mine, which is 56 episodes long, I have come to the conclusion that you are in fact the Zodiac Killer.
You come to what conclusion?
To the conclusion that you're the Zodiac Killer.
That I am.
Correct, yeah.
I see.
So,
Now, just a second. Now, let me get this straight. You have a YouTube channel?
correct, I have a YouTube channel titled the Zodiac Killer Insight series, which I'm pretty sure you know about.
No, I don't.
You don't know about my channel. You've not watched any of my videos.
No, I haven't.
Okay. Well, I've been researching the Zodiac case for the last 5 years. My name is Joe. I'm a Portuguese individual calling you from Sydney in Australia. And
you've called me before, haven't you?
I have spoken with you before, yes, Gareth. And I've studied rigorously the Zodiac letters and cards, and I continually find your name, your acronym, and your coded reference to the 184 throughout all the Zodiac correspondence. So I just don't know how that is possible. And I'd like to get some reasoning from you on that, please.
Do you know anything about permutations and combinations?
Yes, I do.
Did you study that in school?
I certainly did. I certainly did, Gareth. That falls under the rubric of.
Do you have any idea?
Yeah.
How many? Do you have any idea how many permutations and combinations there are of Roman letters that add up to 184?
Yes, I do.
The number of permutations.
Yes, I do. But your name, your alphanumerical name, Gareth Penn, adds up to the number 184, and the number 184 is continually found through the Zodiac's coded messages in his letters and cards. Did the Zodiac not say, you find my code and you'll have me? Can you deny that, or you cannot deny that?
Well, I have no idea what you're referring to.
Well, Gareth, firstly,
You're making a statement in one sentence over the phone,
Yeah.
and I haven't seen your work.
Well, firstly, Gareth, I want to say that I've got high regard for your intelligence. I really do. I have extremely high regard for your intelligence. I have read your book, Time 17. I'm perhaps the only individual on the face of the planet that has read Time 17 more times than others. I can tell you that I've read that book over 30 times. And I find...
Okay, can I get a word in there? Can I get a word in edgewise here?
Yeah, you can. Go ahead, Gareth. Go ahead.
You know, the San Francisco Police Department has two partial fingerprints of the Zodiacs.
Mm-hmm.
And the Federal Bureau of Investigation has had my fingerprints since 1965.
Yeah.
Now, I would have to believe that if anybody seriously thought that I was the Zodiac, that they would have compared my fingerprints with the Zodiac's.
Yeah, well...
It seems to me inconceivable. I know, the number 184, you're so fascinated by that you're completely unconcerned about things like biometrics, which are actual evidence that can be used in a court of law. Now, we have two partial fingerprints from the Zodiac, a palm print, a shoe print, and DNA.
Well, Gareth, can I just say something?
May I finish speaking, please, sir?
Yes, Gareth, go right ahead. No worries.
Will you please allow me to finish my thought?
Yes, I will.
I really appreciate that.
Yes.
Any law enforcement agency that wants my fingerprints or a sample of my DNA or my palm prints, or they want to take a look at the shoes in my closet to see what size shoes I wear, which incidentally are size 12, a size and a half larger than the one that Zodiac was wearing at Lake Berryessa, they're welcome to do it. And all you have to do, and something I wish you would use your YouTube channel for, would be to motivate an agency of law enforcement that has a Zodiac case, and there are half a dozen of them in California. If you can get them interested in comparing my biometrics with the known biometrics of the Zodiac, they're welcome to do it. I'll be happy to cooperate with them.
Okay. Now, can I talk now? You're done there?
Go ahead.
I have tried all that, Gareth, but the authorities don't seem to be too interested in coming to a solution pertaining the Zodiac Killer case. They seem to be leaving the American authorities just don't seem to care much about the case. I mean, the case has been inactive and it's been active and it's been inactive and it's been active again. So there's just too much that I think they've been swamped by a lot of nonsense. They've been inundated with a lot of cooks that have come along and have fed them all the bullshit regarding the Zodiac killer case that they've completely lost interest. Now, there's no record at all anywhere of you having provided the authorities your fingerprints. None. And concerning.
So are you aware that I served for 2 years in the United States Army?
I certainly, Gareth, I know more about you than anybody else on the face of the planet.
No, Dad, yes or no? Do you know that?
Yes, I do. I said I know more about you than anybody else on the face of the planet. I've studied you for the last 5 years.
Do you know more about me than I do?
No, not more about you. I said I know more about you than anybody else but you on the face of the planet. I've studied you for 5 years, Gareth.
Are you aware that I served in the United States Army?
Yes, I am. I am in artillery surveying.
Are you aware? May I finish?
Yes.
Are you aware that I was a federal employee from 1991 to 2000?
Yes, I know. I know all that.
Okay. Are you aware that when you enter the United States Army or any branch of the armed forces, that the first thing they do is fingerprint you?
I did national service myself, Gareth.
The same thing, excuse me, but the same thing is true when you're hired as a federal civilian employee.
Mm-hmm.
And those fingerprints wind up at the National Criminal Identification Center of the FBI.
Mm-hmm.
So so I have been fingerprinted twice.
Yeah.
And those fingerprints are in custody of the FBI.
Mm-hmm. Well, having served 2 years in the military myself, Gareth, you're not the only one that's done military service. I've done military service myself. I did 2 years.
When did I say that?
When did you say what?
When did I say that I was the only one?
No, I'm saying that you're not the only one that's done military service. I've also done military service. I did military service in the South African Defence Force. So I know all about the military inside story.
Okay, look, I'd like to cut this short. I'm going to give you some information here.
Yes.
I want to give you a phone number to call. That's area code 858.
Yeah.
285.
Yeah.
6131.
Okay. And who is that?
That's the number directly to. That is the direct number to Will Altenhof, who is a detective in the San Diego County Sheriff's Department.
Yeah.
Why don't you talk to him about the number 184?
Okay.
He'd be really interested to hear about it from you.
No, I don't want to talk to Will Altenhof. I've spoken with him in the past, and he does not interest me at all. So I gather that Will Altenhof has contacted you. Have you?
Business card right here.
Okay. So has he been to see you, or have you guys had a chat over the phone, or has he?
I spent 3 hours talking to him a year ago.
Okay. On the phone, or did he come see you personally?
Yes, he talked to me personally, face to face.
Okay. That's fine. If he's done that, then he's done his job. And that concludes that nothing pertaining the murder of Nicky Benedict down in Poway has come to fruition, which is a crime that I believe is also attributed to the Zodiac killer. 14-year-old Nicky Benedict that was murdered in Poway on the 1st of May of 1967, 184 days after the murder of Cherry Joe Bates in Riverside.
No, it's 183 days.
Well, you seem to know that quite clearly. I mean, that just came out of the top of your head, so it means that you know something about it.
I talked about it with Detective Altenhof. That's why I know about it.
Okay, so from the day that Cherry Joe Bates was murdered until the 1st of May, if you count that day, it's 184 days.
It's 183, son.
Okay.
The 30th of October was the 303rd day of the year.
Okay.
The 1st of May is the 121st of 1967.
Okay.
365 plus 121 minus 303 is 183, not 184.
Gareth, I've told you that I regard your intelligence highly. I could not be as intelligent as what you are, so there's no reason to demonstrate that on the phone at all. I could not compare with you intelligently. You are far more intelligent than what I could ever be.
Your arithmetic is wrong. Your arithmetic is wrong.
So everything I've done pertaining your name, pertaining your acronym GSP is wrong. You're saying that your name is not found.
Bullshit.
So,
Hey, do whatever you want on your YouTube channel, but just don't call me again, okay? Bye.
And that was Gareth Penn on the phone with Joe from the Zodiac Killer Insight series. At this time, I would like to ask the first challenge question, and that would be, what is your response to that? And we will be discussing this throughout the interview that we have with Joe that we're going to play in just a second, but what do you think about the conversation that Gareth Penn just had with Joe there? And I have to give a big thank you to Joe from the Zodiac Killer Insight series YouTube channel for allowing me to share anything that he has done. He said you can use any of my audio clips, any of my video material, share anything on Black Box Online Radio. Big thank you to Joe. And another point is, Joe is not pushing any type of website. He is not selling any type of book. He simply says that he wants to put his material out there and make it available to other people. But I would love to see your responses in the comments section below. Do you notice anything odd about Gareth Penn's responses to being accused of being not only the Zodiac Killer, but also, as you heard, murdering Sherry Jo Bates, murdering Nikki Benedict down in Poway, California, the 1st of May, 1967? If you would like to hear more about those cases, Sherry Jo Bates, Nikki Benedict, and even the 1981 murder of Joan Webster, we have uploads on all of those cases individually here on this channel. And I actually made the upload, The Murder of Nikki Benedict, because of this interview that Joe had done with Gareth Penn, talking a lot about the number 184. And then we also have an episode called Michael O'Hare and the Murder of Joan Webster, available here on this channel. But right now, let's just listen to our interview with Joe from the Zodiac Killer Insights series. Okay, let's go. Okay, hello, it is Monday, a Zodiac Monday, and at this time I would like to welcome Joe from Zodiac Killer Insights to this channel. He is the host of the Zodiac Killer Insights series. Joe, are you there?
Oh, I am, Ned.
Okay, excellent. You're in Australia, right?
I certainly am, yep.
Well, thank you for making the trip out to West Virginia.
Fantastic.
Okay, now Joe, you host the Zodiac Killer Insights series on YouTube. Now, for the audience, would you mind introducing your theory about the Zodiac Killer?
Well, I certainly can do that for you, Ned. And first of all, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate you giving me the time to chat with you regarding this really important subject. And I think for the benefit of your listeners, it might be good if I do a brief introductory apropos Gareth Penn, well, Gareth Cyril Penn, the man that I believe is the Zodiac Killer and the man responsible for all the attacks that took place both in Northern and Southern California during the mid to late 1960s. So if that's okay with you, I'll just offer your audience. There might be people that don't know about Gareth Cyril Penn. So I think, in fairness, it's good that I may just provide, it'll only take me a minute or so there, so that people can get up to speed with Gareth Cyril Penn and they might know a little bit more about him and his background. I'm not going to go too much into detail because otherwise I'm going to stay an hour over here and you don't have time to spend discussing Gareth Penn for an hour regarding his background. So
I got all the time in the world. Take all the time you need, Joe.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, look, Gareth, in a nutshell, Gareth Cyril Penn was born on the Monterey Peninsula in the city of Carmel by the Sea in California. He was born at 2 a.m. and he was the first baby born on January 1st of 1941. He was the son of Jean Cyril Penn. She was born Smith.
and of also Scott Penn. He's got a stepsister by the name of Dorothea Rastegar. She's become known as Dodo. The reason why she's known as Dodo remains unknown to me. His mum, Jean, she was born May 20th of 1914 and sadly passed away in 1994 at the age of 80. His father has also passed away. He was born on October 19 of 1913 and he passed away June 18 of 1995. Hugh and Jean were married in 1934 when Jean was 19 at the time and Hugh had just turned 20. Brief background on Jean. She was a notable poet back in the 30s when she was at the San Jose College. She won 2 Phelan Contest Awards, and she was also a prominent San Jose State College campus writer. She eventually became the president of the Pegasus Club, which was an honoured literary club dedicated to promoting creative writing at the campus. Jean and Hugh eventually divorced, and Jean went on to marry Miles Archibald Standish in 1947, and she was 33 at the time. Miles Archibald was born in Hammond, Indiana on June 22nd of 1922. I don't know much about Miles, her second husband, besides little incidents that took place between him and Gareth, particularly during Gareth Penn's adolescence. Not much is also known about his father, Hugh Penn. I do know that Hugh Penn was enlisted into the Air Corps in, forgive me if I'm going to say this name wrong, Friesen, California,
How do you spell that?
on January 3rd of 1943, and he became a cryptographer in the military during World War II. When he returned back from the war, he worked for the California Highway Patrol and the Department of Justice in Sacramento, and he was also recognized as one of California's first criminal profilers to work on the East Area Rapist case, which has become known as the Golden State Killer case. And we all know that Joseph D'Angelo has eventually been apprehended for the crimes that he committed. You also worked primarily for the California Attorney General and the State Highway Patrol doing forensic auto accident analysis. Now, I could give you a little bit more about Gareth Penn, but as I've said, Ned, if you have any further questions, you're more than welcome to ask them, and I will, try to the best of my knowledge to answer those questions that you may have, particularly regarding Gareth Penn and why I also believe that he's responsible for the Zodiac killing episode.
Yeah, sure thing, Joe. The first question I would like to know is, Gareth Penn is somebody who was a researcher who went on to become a suspect. Why did you originally think that Gareth Penn may be the Zodiac killer himself?
Look, when you mention the word suspect, Gareth Penn talks about being a suspect in his book Time 17. Now,
Right.
when you're an author of a book, you can basically write anything you want to. It does not necessarily mean that in writing being a suspect that he was an official law enforcement suspect. There is no record at all available online or through the Freedom of Information that lists Gareth Penn as being an official Zodiac case suspect. Gareth Penn introduced himself to the authorities after allegedly discovering the secret of the radian upon the peak of Mount Diablo when this took place on the 26th of December of the year 1980. The day after that, he phoned the San Francisco Police Department to inform them of his discovery, and subsequently he introduced himself to Captain Ken Nallo of the Napa Police, where they had a few discussions. I think he went and saw Nallo 2 or 3 times, and through what's been available reading in Time 17 with what Gareth Penn has actually written, he declares that Nallo queried about his fingerprints from the Department of Military, I forget the name of the department that
provides the fingerprints there in the United States. And according to Gareth Penn, his fingerprints were not found to have been a match to the ones that were taken from the taxi cab of Paul Stein after the murder after his murder in the heights of San Francisco on the night of October in 1969. So, having spoken with one of the detectives that Gareth Penn knows all too well about, because he actually mentioned the name of the detective when we spoke briefly on the phone, and I'm sure you've heard that conversation that I had with Gareth Penn on the phone when I phoned him.
Yes, I have.
And I basically threw it on his face that I believed that he was the Zodiac killer. He was well aware that I had spoken with William Altnoff, who was the lead detective down in the San Diego County Sheriff's Department, that is actively still investigating the murder, the cold case that's still open today of the murder of little 14-year-old Nikki Benedict in Poway on May 1st of 1967. And one of the things that William Altnoff told me in one of our discussions was that, and this came directly from the horse's mouth, was that, people shouldn't put too much credence onto those fingerprints taken from the taxi cab, because anybody could have, in fact, not necessarily the Zodiac, but anybody could have placed his hand on the dashboard of that cab or on the outside, and they could have physically planted or unknowingly have planted that fingerprint on the dashboard or on the outside of the cab. So I take it as sort of gospel. If law enforcement aren't placing too much credence onto that avenue, I'm also not going to place too much credence that there's a lot of substance to be taken from those fingerprints. A lot of people discuss that the fingerprints, are very important, but as I've said that, and I'll say it again, it coming directly from the authorities, they're not placing much credence onto those fingerprints.
Okay, Joe. I think it's also important to say that you accuse Gareth Penn of committing the canonical Zodiac killer murders of David Faraday, Betty Lou Jensen, Darlene Ferrin, Cecilia Shepard, and Paul Stein. You were just talking about the Stein murder, but you go even further by saying that you believe that Gareth Penn was not only the Zodiac killer, but he also committed additional murders, such as the murder of Nikki Benedict and Poway. You stated that one. How many people do you think Gareth Penn murdered in total?
If I can just do a brief summary on the Nikki Benedict, and I actually want to discuss one aspect of that Nikki Benedict murder down in Poway, because it's going to bring me to that number 184 net that you should be well aware that, to me, the number 184 is the key to the labyrinth. The number 184 opens up all the doors of this labyrinth. And for the benefit of your audience, I've never divulged this in public before, but people do know that I was in the military, and whilst I was in the military for the last 18 months of my military time, I learned an extremely important set of skills. We used to call them LORs. Now, what LORs were, I don't know if the military in the United States uses the same terminology, but what LORs were, particularly me, because I was in the intelligence division, in the signals part of the intelligence. I was stationed at the border between South Africa and Angola. I was responsible for listening in to the rebel forces on the other side of the border communicating, because they were communicating in Portuguese, and me being Portuguese, I was then able to translate their coded messages and relay them back to HQ. Now, LOR basically stands for listen, observe, and report. Now, I was trained in those skills, and I applied those skills to my journey when I began my journey regarding the Zodiac killer case. And I immediately noticed, when I began applying those skills, and when I began noticing about there was a radian involved, there was a map that was sent with a clock face drawn around the VABM, the variable angle benchmark for Mount Diablo, which is 3824. I had a sense that to me, having been trained in LLR, in this particular skill, I sensed that the man that was creating these cards and sending these letters and these maps had some type of military training. And when I came across the Bates letter that was mailed to the Riverside Police Department on April 30th of 1967, where the Zodiac signed the bottom of that missive with what seems to be a funny-looking Z with what appears to be a number 3. And then having read that Gareth Penn was the first individual that commented on that particular looking signature at the bottom of the letter, and he actually went on to mention that it resembles an Arabic numeral 3, I began thinking there has to be some sort of mathematical theme involved here. Otherwise, why would a man like Gareth Penn, being the first man to discuss not only the radian angle upon the Pico Monticello, but also providing information about that funny-looking Z at the bottom of that letter, why would he mention the number 3? Why would the numeral be so important to him? And when I began dissecting the letter, trying to find out what was so important about him mentioning the Arabic number 3, I was immediately drawn to the fact that when you take the number 3, that funny-looking Z with that number 3 written on it completes the sequence 184. Because if you go and take an analysis of that missive, you will notice that on the first line, there are in fact 8 letters. On the second line, there are 5. On the third, there are 9, and on the last line, there are 6. So if you take 8 and 5 is 85. If you take 9 and 6 is 96. 85 plus 96 gives you 181. When you add that veiled 3 in the letter Z to 81, you get 184. Now, 184 is a coded reference to the name Gareth Penn. The Zodiac spoke about writing in code in his letters. The Zodiac actually taunted the authorities. Have you found the code? So when I found that correlation between the number 184 found in the Bates letter and Gareth Penn's name mysteriously applying, when I applied the alphanumerical sequence to his name, if people in the audience, in your listening audience, don't know what an alphanumerical sequence is, it's basically you take every letter of the alphabet and you apply the number 1 beginning at A, and you go down to the last letter of the alphabet, which is the letter Z, and you apply it to the number 26. So from 1 to 26, you then take the letters in Gareth Penn's name, you apply the numerical value to those letters, and you come up to the number 184. So when I found that, I knew exactly, could this gentleman be giving me a clue, being the first individual that provided the substance to that Arabic number 3, there had to be something there that solidified my belief. So I had to keep searching. And when I, in fact, Ned, when I purchased, I went a step further and I purchased the near exact map that the Zodiac used to mail the Phillips 66 map to the San Francisco Chronicle. I've got it here, I've worked on it, and I've actually showed it in one of my presentations over at my channel. When I began analyzing that map, and when I came across the city of Poway, and that city of Poway falls on map grid coordinates of 14, and the letter H, with the letter H being the 8th letter of the alphabet, I came across the number 184 again. And there alone, I began seeing a pattern that began expanding. So the pattern wasn't, the pattern of the 184 is in fact found throughout the majority of the letters written by the Zodiac killer during the period 66, encompassing 78. Now, what I found extremely hard is to get people to understand how this number 184 is important. Now, one thing that has been discussed, and you heard me and Gareth Penn discussing this when I had that conversation with Gareth Penn on the phone, was when I asked him that the murder of Nicky Benedict took place 184 days from the Cherry Joe Bates murder in Riverside, he was extremely quick at dismissing my narrative. Right. However, let me ask you a question, Ned.
Sure.
When we start counting days of the calendar, what day do we start counting? Do we start counting? So, for example, if we want to count 365 days in a year,
right?
We count January 1st as the first day,
yes,
and December 31st as the 365 day of the year. Is that right?
Yeah, we do.
I'm sure you'll agree with me.
I do.
100%. Okay, so because Gareth Penn is dismissive and claiming that it's 183 days, so we're in fact running around in circles. I'm claiming it's 184, he's claiming it's 183, and you in fact have done a mathematical analysis which is available in one of your videos that does show the number 183. I'm not disputing that. What I'm disputing is my claim that my analogy of 184 is also correct, because how can we dismiss that the Zodiac was in fact working in cycles? So what I'm trying to establish is the 30th of October of 1966 was not only a day of a cycle ending, for whatever reason we don't know. I mean, remind yourselves that Gareth Penn landed at Maguire Air Force Base from Berlin. When he was drafted into the United States Army, he landed at Maguire Air Force Base on the 30th of October of 1965.
Right.
365 days later, which is a complete circle, a revolution, the O, all right? That Penn talks about pies and radians and circles. So 365 days, which is a complete cycle, Cherry Joe Bates is murdered in Riverside, California.
But
so who am I to say that on that same day, the Zodiac didn't start his next cycle, so he started counting the 30th of October of 1966 as day one, and when he got to May 1st of 1967, the day that Nicky Benedict was killed in Poway was the 184th day, which does add up.
Okay, yeah,
so
I follow
you
all
can't
of that.
deny that. Nobody can deny that.
Now, there was one point that you did say in there about how you found the number 14 and you had to insert an 8 into that because of the letter H. I didn't
Correct.
follow what you meant by that.
Okay, so see, here again, there's another problem with a lot of, and please, I'm not having a go at you in any way, Ned. I'm just trying to exemplify people's involvement within the Zodiac killer case. A lot of people sit on fences and they shout and they throw stones at glass houses, okay? But nobody, I'd like to know how many people have investigated this case that have in fact purchased a Phillips 66 map, right? I'm living in Australia. I took it upon myself to try and find out what the Zodiac was trying to say, trying to find out what the clues he was trying to provide me via the radian clue upon the peak of Mount Diablo. I took it upon myself to do an online search, trying to find the map, because I wanted to know, I wanted to be sure that the clue he was providing me had substance. And what I did is I took it upon myself to buy a map, and I had that map shipped from the United States over to Australia. And when I began looking at that map, I saw the exact map, or the exact format of the Phillips 66 map that the Zodiac mailed to the San Francisco Chronicle, where he had drawn that clock face around Mount Diablo of 0369. And when I began inspecting that map of the Californian coast, every map has got what they call the key, where it gives you the scales and it gives you all these other different little bits of interpretations that come with the key. And also at the bottom of the map, so on the bottom part of the map and on the top part, it's got numerals. So they divide the map into sequences. So on the bottom it's numerals, and at top on the right hand side so it's coordinates. It's called a map coordinate. And the city of Poway falls within the block, or the coordinate block, that matches the number 14 on the bottom, and to the right it matches the letter H, with the letter H being the 8th letter of the alphabet.
Oh,
so if you take the letter H and you apply it to the 14, you've now got the number 184.
Right.
Regardless of if it's 148, the three numbers that are involved within the city of Poway are the numbers 184, because you got the city of Poway sitting on map coordinates, and this is how an artillery survey instructor will work. Now, Penn is a trained artillery survey instructor, so Penn is well versed in using map coordinates. So you will know that the city of Poway, anyone that's purchased that Phillips 66 map will be able to verify that I'm not blowing smoke, that I'm in fact telling the truth, that the city of Poway lies on grid coordinates on the expanded map of California that encompasses northern and southern California. The city of Poway falls on grid coordinates 14 and H, with H being the 8th letter of the alphabet. So how can that all of a sudden be a coincidence that I've got a man whose name, alphanumerically speaking, coded version of his name is the 184, and I've got the city of Poway falling on grid coordinates that also provide me the number 184. I find that extremely hard to believe that it's a coincidence.
Well, Joe,
that to me shows me that the man that created the Zodiac game was a military man, okay? And when people start looking at the Zodiac case through the eyes of an artillery surveyor, okay, who provided the authorities, the newspapers, and the general public in the city by the bay, in the area, clues to what he was doing, he was in fact, as an artillery surveying, the individual was in fact plotting what is known as fire missions in the map. And what I mean with that is that Lake Herman Road, Blue Rock Springs, Lake Berryessa, Presidio Heights in San Francisco were in fact fire missions that the man was creating. And if you were caught in those fire missions on that particular day when he decided to go and carry out those attacks, you were in dire straits. And we all know what happened on the nights of December 20th of 1968. We know what happened on a late night to early morning of July 4th or 5th of 1969. We know what took place on September 27th of 1969. And we know what also occurred on October 11th of 1969.
okay.
So,
Okay, Joe,
yep.
oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I wanted to know one thing,
Okay.
because Gareth Penn did write a book called Time 17, where he looked at a suspect named Michael Henry O'Hare, and he said that he had found the Zodiac killer. Why is your theory that Gareth Penn is the Zodiac right, and why is the Michael O'Hare theory wrong?
Because in the way that I see this, I cannot see that a man that was living out of state, particularly on the east coast of the United States, would be able to travel in and out of California, traveling all the way from New York State, all the way through to California to come and commit these murders and then go back again. Not only that, we've also got the locations of like locations like Vallejo, like Lake Herman Road, which were locations that were basically in the boondocks, like you guys call it in the States, were locations where not many people knew about these locations. So you had to be a person that lived within a geographical profile of those locations where those murders were committed. So I find it highly unlikely that a man like Michael Henry O'Hare, who lived on the east coast of the United States, was able to travel to California for whatever reason he came, perhaps for work. I mean, Gareth Penn discusses him being in California during that period, but O'Hare denies it vehemently, saying he was never there. And regardless, I still find it very unlikely that Michael Henry O'Hare would have sort of an intimate knowledge of those locations. I mean, not many people knew about the Lake Herman Road, that secluded road on the outskirts of Benicia, Vallejo, where the water pumping station was. So that shows to me someone that lived locally, a resident of California, a man that lived, if you put a geographical profile around those areas, so that this man lived within the probably 20 or 30 mile or kilometre radius. He lived well inside that geographical profile of where those murders took place. Now, the other reason why I also don't believe Michael O'Hare is in fact the Zodiac is because, as I maintain, the way I look at Time 17 and The Way I Look at the Second Power. These were two books that were written by a man that had to expel secrets. This man has been carrying far too much baggage with him over the years. There are two particular incidents in the Second Power where Gareth Penn talks about incest, and he talks about as a child, many things that took place. And I find those particular passages of when he goes into extreme detail about what took place. Now, he's talking about Michael Henry O'Hare, so I don't know how Gareth Penn would have been able to know that Michael Henry O'Hare had in fact been molested by his mum, had been molested by his father. So what I see happening here is a man, the author of these books, having to find a scapegoat that fit his narrative well enough that he could construct a book or like Time 17 and a book and a pamphlet like The Second Power to try and put the blame on. Now, remind yourselves of one thing. Michael O'Hare's father, his name was Eugene. So what is so interesting about the name Eugene?
I don't know.
The name Eugene is in fact the name of both Gareth Penn's mother and Gareth Penn's father, because if you separate the name Eugene, you've got you and you've got Gene.
Oh my God!
Am I right?
Wow.
Correct. So you see where this is going. So one name, Eugene, carries the name of Gareth Penn's father, Hugh, and the second part of Eugene carries the name of Gareth Penn's mother, Jean. So this is where this whole
he's a likely candidate.
Conundrum regarding Gareth Penn comes into effect.
Sure.
I've said, this was a man that he was expelling. He's got too many secrets within, and he had to find a way to get rid of these secrets. And he wrote about those secrets in Time 17, and he wrote about those secrets in The Second Power. But he had to find that scapegoat, that person, Patsy, if you want to call him, to put the blame on. And unfortunately, how we came across the name Michael Henry O'Hare is not well known to me. I mean, if I go according to Gareth Penn tells that he found his name at the library in Vallejo. He came across the name of Michael O'Hare's mother, Bertha Margulies, and that's how his whole avenue, his whole substance of finding out a little bit more about Michael O'Hare and be able to build that case regarding HOH, which is a reference to water.
Michael H.
And this is correct, Michael HOH,
Yeah.
Now, don't forget that the name Sewell, you guys might pronounce it differently than in the United States, but I pronounce it Sewell is the way I see it. Sewell is in fact a reference to water because you've got sea, the ocean, and you've got a well, which is a place where there's water inside. So not only does Michael Henry O'Hare his name reference to water, but so does Gareth Sewell's pen names references to water. So, and this is what I'm saying. So I find that the author of the book of Time 17, the author of The Second Power, is in fact the man responsible for the crimes, but he had to build his narrative in such a way that he was able to find a scapegoat or a patsy to blame regarding all this. Now, the other thing that's interesting also, Ned, is Michael Henry O'Hare denied being the Zodiac killer.
Absolutely.
When he got wind that Gareth Penn was, calling him, blaming him for the crimes and insinuating that he was the Zodiac killer and he had written a book about it, Michael Henry O'Hare wrote an article which was published in a magazine. Now, I challenge anybody who has listened to my conversation with Gareth Penn to find where the denial from Gareth Penn came in that conversation. There was no denial. He had ample opportunity to deny my claims, particularly not only the fact that I blame him for murdering all the kids up in Northern California, but also that he's a child killer, having killed a 14-year-old child in Poway in Southern California. And not once did Gareth Penn say to me, "You are crazy. What are you talking about? I'm going to sue you. Retract your material from the online community. I've got nothing to do with these crimes." There has been no denial whatsoever on the part of Gareth Penn. And I think I know why there's been no denial, Ned. Because it's far too important for a narcissistic, sociopathic, evil killer to deny. Because if Gareth Penn denies, there are far too many vowels, there are far too many consonants, there are far too many letters, there are far too many cipher symbols, there are far too many diagrams written, there are far too many letters, there are far too many cards written, there are far too many victims involved in all of this. There was far too much time spent in creating this card. There was far too much time spent in creating an elaborate hood to use at Lake Berryessa. So by Gareth Penn denying that, to me, he's denying himself. And for a narcissistic, evil, sociopathic killer, he can't do that because he cannot deny himself. Now, you will deny it to the authorities because at the end of the day, any of these sociopathic, narcissistic, evil killers, they're cowards. They don't want to go to jail. And we saw that taking place when Joseph DeAngelo was caught. On the day before Joseph DeAngelo was caught, he was seen driving throughout the Californian state with the wind blowing through his hair in his motorbike. The following day, the guy is caught. We see a frail Joseph DeAngelo on a walking stick. We see him looking for pity. This is the cowardness of these guys. They're prepared to do the crime, but they're not prepared to do the time.
Absolutely not.
And this is exactly why I say, to me, it's one of the reasons why Gareth Penn will never come out and deny to anybody, not only me. You would have denied it to the authorities. However, Ned, I don't place too much trust in authority because a lot of these law enforcement detectives, a lot of these guys that are in law enforcement, a lot of these guys that they call themselves so-called detectives, these guys couldn't follow an ant's trail away from a sugar cube. And I'm sorry to say, but it's the truth.
Who are you talking about?
Pardon?
Who are you directing those comments toward? These
to many of the law enforcement personnel that's been involved over the years in investigating crime.
Yeah,
not necessarily
that's actually a good question, Joe.
The Zodiac crime. Yep.
Why isn't there more focus on Gareth Penn? Like, why didn't they suspect him in 1969? I mean, why not until he came forward by his own volition? Yep.
That is the $1 million question
right.
that I would like somebody to answer. I don't know the answer to that. I don't reside in the United States. I'm living on the other side of the world, 17 hours away from you guys. So I can't, for the hell of me, Ned, as a man that thinks logically and a man that puts a process in place when trying to decipher the Zodiac's clues and the Zodiac storms, the man that, like me, who's come across this name, there's so much interest in this guy, not only intimately with the case, but also externally. I just don't understand why this guy has not been the subject of a thorough investigation. Because at the end of the day, perhaps one of the reasons why, Ned, is that there's no physical evidence linking the guy to the crime, and the authorities need physical evidence. The authorities cannot go to a court of law with number 184. They can't go to a court of law with a literary agenda or a mathematical agenda, because that's not how the law apparatus works. The law apparatus requires, when you're going to a court of law, it's the onus is on the defense or on the prosecution to provide enough evidence that this man is responsible for what he's done. And to have that, they're going to need DNA, and they're going to need some type of fingerprints, or they're going to need some bit of forensic evidence that was found at one of the crimes that is able to positively link the individual. And unfortunately, there's nothing at all that can positively link Gareth Penn or any other subject for that matter to the Zodiac killer case. There is nothing.
Okay,
We
Joe.
have fingerprints on a cab. We have fingerprints on a phone booth. But listening to what the authorities told me, they're not placing too much credence on the fingerprints taken from the cab of Paul Stein. Now, is the detective telling me the truth? I don't know. But what I do know is that Arthur Lee Allen was one to say that there were two types of liar in the world. That's policemen and fishermen, and not necessarily in that order. So, it's up to you to decide if the guy's telling me the truth or not.
Now, Joe, do you also accuse Gareth Penn of committing the 1981 murder of Joan Webster?
I am not totally convinced, Ned, although I find the likeness to Gareth Penn on the composite sketch that was provided by Jim Carson, I find a likeness to Gareth Penn like I've not seen before. And you've actually uploaded a comparison of that side-to-side sketch where I provide a photo of Gareth Penn and also the sketch that was provided to Jim Carson. And when I saw that, I started getting chills down my spine because I could see a very good resemblance to the individual. How he was able to commit that crime, if he in fact committed that crime, Ned, I have not been able to prove. I mean, all I do know is that back in the day, back in the 80s, travel flights were much easier to book as what they are now, because you did not have to present any sort of proof of your identity. Anybody could just phone up, book a flight, and I mean, I could phone up as Ned, and they would have Ned registered on their flight records, and they would not have necessarily have had Gareth Penn. So Gareth Penn could have flown into Logan Airport under a different name. I can't prove that. That's just conjecture. That's just me talking. But that's the only way that I can see him involving himself in the crime. The other dubious thing that I find hard to comprehend, and perhaps that takes me down the avenue of another involvement by somebody else, is that Joan Webster was seen walking out to a cab with an individual. So she was accompanied by an individual out to a cab, and whilst they were at this cab, a argument ensued between the cab driver and the individual that was with Joan Webster over heavy luggage. And what actually happened after that is that the individual then told Joan Webster, according to the reports that the cab driver gave to the authorities, and which reports were subsequently released by Eve Carson, I beg your pardon, was that the individual told Joan Webster to climb into the vehicle that was parked behind the cab. Now, for him to tell her that, there had to be somebody else inside that car.
Right.
Because that car it's impossible that vehicle would have just been parked there at the location where cabs are, because if it had just been parked there without any person inside, I guarantee you that the vehicle would have most likely would have been towed away. So somebody had to be driving that vehicle. So Joan Webster climbed into a vehicle without us knowing how many people were in fact inside that vehicle. Was it only one extra individual? Were more individuals in the car? Because I assure you that it wasn't only Joan Webster and the individual that walked with her to the taxi rank. So somebody else had to be inside that vehicle. Who that person was, or who the people were more than one, meaning plural, remains unknown. Which now brings another interesting segment to the case. Are there more people involved in the Zodiac killing case?
Okay.
Because if Joan Webster was murdered that night, two things could have ensued. Either the driver drove them, or there was a driver in Joan Webster and the other individual, and the two individuals committed a crime, or somebody was dropped off and the driver kept taking Joan Webster and eventually murdered her. That's the only two logical explanations that I can come up with regarding that incident.
Okay, now, Joe, You have said that possibly Joan Webster is a victim from Massachusetts, but you definitely accuse Gareth Penn of the murders of Sherry Jo Bates and Nikki Benedict, then the Zodiac killer
Yes, I do.
crimes. Some of the victims in that set of crimes were stabbed with a knife, and some were killed with handguns, like at Lake Herman Road, Presidio Heights, Blue Rock Springs, and Joan Webster was bludgeoned to death. She died from blunt force trauma. Why all
Hmm.
the different methods of murder if you have a single perpetrator in the Zodiac killer mystery? How does that fit into your
Uh,
theory?
uh, yeah, I agree with what you're saying. Unfortunately, when her body was discovered up in Hamilton, off Tobacco Road, the body was so badly decomposed that it was virtually impossible to ascertain if she had in fact been stabbed. So
You
we
mean
don't
Joan
know
Webster,
if
yes.
John Webster had in fact been stabbed, if she had in fact. So we can't prove the sequence of events that happened to her bludgeoning. We don't know. We don't know what. So everybody's got an hypothesis. Everybody can say that yes, she was only bludgeoned, but she wasn't stabbed or she wasn't strangled. But how can we prove that? There was no the forensic pathologist. There's been no indication coming out of Jean Carson that Eve Carson. I beg your pardon. I keep calling her Jean.
Yes,
I
Eve
prefer
Carson,
to
the
us.
sister-in-law of
Yeah,
Joan.
please. Yeah, I'm just thinking of Jean. I don't know why Jean's in my head now. But Eve Carson. I've read nowhere that indicates that the pathologist was able to ascertain if any stab wounds had in fact been delivered to John Webster. So we do know that she was bludgeoned. Definitely her head, there's a big hole in her head. But could she have also been stabbed? Could she have been strangled? Was this overkill? I don't know, Ned. I really don't know. But I do know
Right.
that why would an individual drive around the Massachusetts state depositing bits and pieces of her luggage and a purse on one side of the highway, a luggage on another place, and then go and deposit her bag that she travelled with at a Greyhound bus station at a locker? That just doesn't make any sense to me. That shows me organisation on the part of the people, or plural, that were involved in the murder that night. Because let's be honest, if you're committing a crime, your first and foremost line of defence is either anonymity or not being caught. So to drive around Massachusetts depositing a purse in one part of the Massachusetts state, then driving to another area and depositing a purse on another part, and then driving to downtown Boston and putting her briefcase, her luggage, her bag inside a locker at a Greyhound bus station, there's more to this than meets the eye. Because if I was a killer and I had, if I just murdered John Webster, I guarantee you I would have deposited all the belongings in the same place. I wouldn't have driven around Massachusetts depositing bits and pieces all over the place. So that's what I can get out of this as well, man.
Okay, and for the audience, one thing we need to say is the remains of Joan Webster were not recovered until nearly 10 years later. I believe that was in 1990, wasn't it, Joe, that her remains were
100%.
discovered?
Yes.
So that's the reason why that decomposition took in, and as
Correct.
Joe said, everything about how they couldn't determine whether or not she was stabbed. That's something that's quite different from everybody else that we said: Sherry Jo Bates, Nikki Benedict, and of course the Zodiac killer
Correct.
victims. But
Correct.
what is the reason why all of these Zodiac killer crimes are so different? Like with Lake Herman Road and Blue Rock Springs, you have some guy sneaking up on people, firing some gunshots, and then disappearing. At Lake Berryessa, the victims are tied up and they're stabbed with a knife, and he's wearing the hood. And then the Paul Stein murder, there's no woman present, it's in a taxi cab. Why are there all these differences in the Zodiac killer mystery? How does that fit into the Gareth Penn theory?
Um, I think, as I mentioned earlier, Ned, the fact that I believe we have a man plotting fire missions on the map, on the Phillips 66 map. And as I mentioned, if you were at that location that he plotted on that particular day that he intended committing murder, you would most likely be one of the victims that felt the ill fate of that fire mission, because he was intent on murdering. And as we know, he did murder. But now, the different thing about Lake Berryessa is that there's a definite meaning to the individual about that particular murder. So why adorn a hood? Why create such an elaborate hood?
Yeah, I was going to ask you that.
Commit that crime?
Why? Yeah.
No, correct. I mean, if he could have just put on a ski mask over his face, just cut 2 holes out, and go out there and do what he had to do, and maybe Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepherd would have lived to tell the tale as they did. Unfortunately, Cecilia lost her life, but Brian has been able to recount the ordeal that day. So why go through such? I mean, it just makes no sense to me. I just cannot. I mean, why create such an elaborate vestment to commit a murder? So to me, there is something important about the 27th of September. That date means something to the guy. I don't know if when looking at the second power and reading how Gareth Penn talks about sexual predation in the home, how he talks about incest, he talks about a child being abused at the age of 7, he talks about a child being abused at the age of 14. I don't know if that 27th has something to do with that, or there's some sort of correlation to that incest or to that sexual predation that took place in the home, as Gareth Penn explains it. But what I do know is that there has to be a definite undertone to why a man would create such an elaborate hood to go out and kill 2 beautiful innocent human beings that were sitting at the lake's edge just enjoying the afternoon. That's the only thing I can think of, because little did the individual know that both would survive long enough to recount the details. So in his mind, he might have thought this was a personal thing for him. I don't think he necessarily meant or expected for Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepherd to live long enough to recount the ordeal. So I do think that this was a private event in the mind of the individual. He was living some kind of private ritual that was important to him, and it was important on that day of the 27th of September of 1969. That's the only logical conclusion that I come to it, because, as I said earlier, if you just want to go out there and kill somebody, you can just put something over his head, cut 2 round holes, and done his business and gone away, or written on the side of the car and driven away. But he didn't. He created an elaborate hood that means something to the guy. And unfortunately, he's the only one that can tell us what the meaning was. We can all hypothesize, we can all come up with our own conclusions to why he did it, but at the end of the day, only the Zodiac can provide you, or Gareth Penn can provide you with the details as to why the hood was constructed and to why he had to use it on the 27th of September of 1969.
Okay, then, what about the Paul Stein murder in Presidio Heights? Because Gareth Penn was very big on the radian, but Paul Stein, as I said, he was murdered in a taxi cab. There's no woman present. Now, I think I know your answer to this, but why is that crime different from all the others?
You've got to understand one thing as well, Ned. The Paul Stein murder was the only murder where trophies were in fact taken from the crime scene.
Right.
That's the only reported crime scene, at least that we as the general public know about, that law enforcement have been able to relay, that there were in fact trophies taken from the crime scene. Nothing was taken from, as far as we know, nothing was taken from Riverside, nothing was taken from Poway with Nicky Benedict, nothing was taken from Lake Erman, nothing was from Blue Rock Springs, and nothing from Lake Berryessa. Right, so Paul Stein's event on the night of October 11th of 1969 was the only event where the Zodiac took trophies away from the crime. He cut a piece of Stein's shirt, he took his keys and his wallet. Now, why would he do that? To me, and this is me speaking, I think this was his swan song. This to me was a way of the individual saying, I'm not going to commit any more crimes. This is why I'm not going to kill any more. I'm going to take these trophies, because later on in life, when I'm goddamn ready to go and tell the people my story, tell the world my story, I've got proof to present to the authorities that I'm the person responsible for murdering responsible for the spate of attacks that took place in the Bay Area, Northern and Southern California. Because if you walk into a police station and you just tell somebody that I'm the Zodiac killer, they're going to laugh in your face. So if you walk into the police station, all of a sudden you've got keys to a cab, you've got a piece of a cab driver still with you, of his shirt, and you've got the wallet of Paul Stein, they're going to look at you and say, hang on a minute, where and how did you get hold of these? So there's more credence placed on an individual walking into a law enforcement agency with those items in hand than what it is for somebody just walking out of the blue and sitting down and saying, yep, I just want to claim that I'm the Zodiac killer. What can you prove? What have you got to show me that you're the Zodiac killer? But if a detective says to me, oh, you're the Zodiac killer, what can you show me or prove something that you're the Zodiac killer? And he starts throwing bits and pieces of physical evidence in the face of this detective. Who are you going to believe, the guy with the evidence or the guy without the evidence?
Okay, then, Joe, does that mean that you believe at some point at the end of this person's life, the Zodiac killer will make a public confession or maybe like last will and testament, and then there's Paul Stein's wallet where there's another piece of the bloody shirt and saying, okay, I'm dead now, this was me, and here's the proof?
That's a very good question, Ed. We all hope that somewhere along the line, not only me, but every other sleuth that's dedicated, sweat, blood, and tears to trying to solve this.
But is that what you were just going down? Like, is that the pathway you were going down?
I hope so, Ned. I hope that the individual does eventually come out and tell the world the secret. I think it means a lot to him. I think that, he wants to be recognised. I don't think he'd want to exit this world without being recognised as the individual responsible for one of the biggest unsolved mysteries, crime mysteries that the world's ever seen, particularly one that involves what I believe involves a mathematical and literary aspect to it. So I don't believe that the individual would just die without, announcing that he's responsible. He may die, or he may leave somebody, proof that he was. At the end of the day, he's the only one that can, in fact, determine what he's going to do. We live in hope, not only for our well-being and for our mental abilities, and also for the families. That there is a conclusion that families do find out who the individual was responsible for the murder of their loved ones. So I'm hoping that he does somewhere along the line come out and reveals all. But it's up to him to decide. We can't force that, and we can't establish if that will eventually take place.
Okay, then, if I can understand everything that you've said so far, you believe that there were murders that were committed, and there is a set of mathematical signatures that link together all of these murders. Sometimes it's the number 184, other times it's a mathematical puzzle that we might not have all the answers to. Is that correct?
100%, Ned. There's so much more that I believe that we still don't know. I definitely see a mathematical and literary aspect to this criminal case, having perhaps because of where I've come from in the military, I've been taught a special set of skills, and taking that set of skills and applying that set of skills to the letters and cards that the individual provided. But the other thing is that I find it hard to come to a satisfactory or plausible explanation as to why somebody like a Arthur Lee Allen or a Ross Sullivan or Galikowski, whoever the guy may be, Svelte Vale, whoever the guy might be, why would this guy have it in him to send a Phillips 66 map to the San Francisco Chronicle with a clock with 0369 written around Mount Diablo and mention the word radian? When I look at that, although I wasn't trained in artillery surveying, it's part of the military. So the military is trained, the artillery surveyors are trained in those aspects. So when I see maps and I see radians and I see clock faces, I see an undertone to do with artillery surveying. And I actually wanted to read you and the audience just two aspects about artillery surveying that are important regarding the radian. If you don't mind, I'm just going to find these two bits of
Sure, please go ahead.
bits that I found here because they're extremely important. I think it will show how the radian is an important unit of measurement in artillery surveying, and also how an artillery surveyor's duties are. Now, reading from one of their field manuals, it states, and I quote, "Another unit of measure, the radian, is used mainly by militaries in artillery, tank, and mortar gunnery." Now, the interesting thing is, Ned, that when Gareth Penn discusses the radian, and he tells you that a radian is used by mathematicians and scientists and blah, 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 and all these other people, not once does he mention, being an artillery surveying instructor, he would know that radians are used in the military. So why did Penn not include that in his writings? Why did Penn hide the fact that the radian is also used by artillery surveyors? I find that extremely, if he wants to be forthcoming and he wants to tell everybody that who actually uses radians, why did he not include that the radian is used by militaries in artillery, tank, and mortar gunneries? Not once did he ever disclose that. So I find that extremely strange. But anyway, carrying on, there are 2 pi radians in a circle. Pi is a constant of approximately 3.14159. That is 2 times 3.14159 or 6.283 radians. Divide each radian into 1,000 milliradians and you see there are 6283 milliradians in a circle. Now a radian is 57.3 degrees. So you can see, having read this out to you and to your listening audience, you can see how important the radian angle is to artillery, to tank, and to mortar gunnery. Because when you are plotting a fire mission, you've got to be pretty precise with your directions. Because 1 or 2 degrees, you're off 1 or 2 degrees, that might mean that those shells are going to land in your own backyard, or they're going to land in your troops that are up, the infantry that's up front, and you don't want that. So you have to try and land those shells on a dime. So the radian is an extremely important unit of measurement in the military. So in Gareth Penn not disclosing that, I just find that extremely strange. Now, some of the duties of a field artillery surveyor includes providing firing position data, recording field data, preparing schematic sketches, and marketing survey stations. Now, where have you seen schematic sketches? You saw them adorned on the bomb diagram, on the bomb letter that the Zodiac made. There are in fact 2 letters that contain schematic diagrams of bombs, according to the Zodiac. Carrying on, performing astronomical observations. So they have to be well versed in star travel. They got to know. You've got to look up at the sky, because if you're doing a fire mission at night, you've got to guide yourself through the stars. Computing data in order to obtain an unrequired field data. And now this is also important, the last point, performing preventive maintenance checks and services on vehicles, radios, weapons, and all survey equipment. So those are all duties of a field artillery surveyor. So let me ask you a question. Did the man responsible for tamper with the vehicle? Did he not remove the plug from the battery or the alternator or something?
Oh yeah.
So as you can see again, right? I can take Gareth Penn as a field artillery surveyor, and I can apply his knowledge to the Tshirts By TeeSpring case quite easily. I can quite easily do that, because some of his duties, performing preventive maintenance checks and services on vehicles. So this guy had some sort of knowledge on the internal components of the combustion engines, or how motors operate. I certainly wouldn't know how to do it.
Right.
I wouldn't know how to go there and pull out a lead. I wouldn't know how to do that. So again, it shows you that Gareth Penn is well trained in tampering with vehicles.
Okay.
So those are just some of the important aspects about a artillery surveyor and about the radians, how they are used in field artillery.
Now, Joe, I mean, you did say some things there just about Sherry Joe Bates, and Do you think that Gareth Penn had any familiarity with her at all, or is he just choosing his location and this is all mathematical? Was there any reason why she was chosen, or did he just wait for any woman to walk out of the library that night, October 30th,
I,
1966?
I think Cherry Joe Bates was his first kill. And I think Cherry Joe
Why
Bates
her?
was an opportunistic
Oh, okay.
victim, and saying that she was tiny in stature, so Cherry Joe Bates was easily controlled. I mean,
Right.
although she fought and to the best of her strength to try and fight the individual off that night, she was easily overpowered. I mean, she was a tiny girl, so any man in the military at that time would have been easily, would have been able to account for her that day. She could, and this is, in a way, this is where Gareth Penn talks about coincidences that just happen, and coincidences that are created by the author. So, waiting outside a library, young, petite woman comes along, looks at her, there's the prime target for me to commit my first murder. I don't believe, this is me speaking, I don't think there were any murders prior to Cherry Joe Bates. I think the Cherry Joe Bates murder was the first crime committed by the Zodiac killer as we know him. Hence, in a way,
But
if you
Joe,
look at the crime and if you start analysing the coroner's report, you start seeing things that to me seem that this guy wasn't well versed in what he was doing. This was sort of his first crime. There were multiple. He tried slitting her throat multiple times. There were many cuts on the throat until he eventually got her right patch because she was fighting. But I think if this guy was a seasoned killer, that he had done this for a while, you would have taken care of Cherry Joe Bates really quickly. You wouldn't have wrestled. You wouldn't have screamed. There's many ways to have done what he did. Easier. So I can see Cherry Joe Bates being an opportunistic kill, a kill that began the game as he reported it in the confession letter. To me, Cherry Joe Bates was the first kill in the game. The second kill was then 184 days was Nicky Benedict. So that takes us 66, 67, 68 and 69. So I believe there were crimes committed consecutively in those years. I do think Nicky Benedict was a victim that was unannounced by the Zodiac killer, hence the belief that I have when I looked at the Halloween card sent to Paul Avery. Paul Avery was known as a ferret, if you want to know. He had a nose for stories for the Zodiac. He bylined all the Zodiac stories up in the city by
did
the
you just
Bay.
call him a ferret?
And, yep.
Cool. Just checking. Go on.
And so I believe that because Paul Avery was able to correlate Cherry Joe Bates' murder down in Riverside with the Zodiac killer, which eventually became a positive thing on the mind of Sherwood Morrill, who he actually analysed the letters and cards, and he was able the letters that were posted down there, and he was able to determine that the handwriting matched the same individual that wrote the letters up in Northern California. So he was able to correlate. Paul Avery was the first man to correlate Cherry Joe Bates to the Zodiac. Now, remind yourselves and your audience that he had not mentioned anything about Cherry Joe Bates when he began sending letters up in the city by the Bay, in the Bay Area. He had not mentioned anything about Cherry Joe Bates. Right. So nobody knew anything about Cherry Joe Bates until the day that Avery smelt the rat, and he was able to then name the Zodiac as a probable murder of Cherry Joe Bates. And I think the card that Paul Avery received was a taunt by the Zodiac, in a way saying, so Mr. Avery, you think you're so clever, you're able to find that I was responsible for Cherry Joe Bates. How about I send you this card adorned with a skeleton and all these funny eyes and all these numbers? Tell me who does this card belong to? I truly and honestly believe with every being of me, with every strength that I have in my body, with every fibre that I have, that the Halloween card is a revelation about the murder of Nicky Benedict in Poway. But once again, that's me speaking. And
Joe,
as I've said, being trained in the special set skills, understanding the logic beyond the process, I can see an assimilation to that unannounced murder by the Zodiac. You didn't announce Jerry Jarbas, and you didn't announce Nikki Benedict.
Okay, the thing that I really wanted to ask you about was, if you're going to say that the Zodiac killer murdered Sherry Joe Bates, do you believe that your suspect, Gareth Penn, also wrote the desktop poem that was found a couple of months after the murder of Sherry Joe Bates that was signed with the letters RH? Do you believe that that was Gareth Penn?
Quite possibly, Ned. There's no way of me proving it, but quite possibly. We do know that Gareth Penn he's got a degree in library science, so he's quite accustomed to being inside libraries. So Gareth Penn would have not only gone inside libraries post-graduation, but prior also. So who's to say that, he had friends and family living in the Riverside vicinity. I was actually able to find through, I don't have the record with me in front of me at the moment, but I was able to establish that one of his family members was actually buried in Riverside. So he died and was actually buried in Riverside. So there is a link between Gareth Penn and Riverside by a family member that was buried in Riverside. So who's to say that Gareth Penn didn't go to the library somewhere whilst on leave from duty and write the poem? I can't prove that. Nobody can disprove it either. So it could be a yes, but it could also be denied. But when I look at the desktop poem and I look at the signature RH and I apply a mathematical theme to the signature RH, R is the 18th letter of the alphabet and H is the 8th. Now that provides me with the number 188. When I look at Gareth Penn's military record, his DOT number for his related civilian occupation and DOT number is 188.
Right.
So can you see all these numbers appearing? That to me, they just seem not to be coincidental. There just seems to be a running theme here, because in my mind, Ned, I can't understand how one man can have so many numbers and so many things appearing that relate to him. It's impossible. It just does not make sense to me.
Okay then, Joe. I would actually like to turn to Gareth Penn himself and look at his response to that, saying two things to you that he said during your call with him. Are you familiar with how many other numbers could add up to those things? And the second one is, what about the biometrics? I think that was the word he used, saying that, what about the harder evidence that you could bring into a court of law? Like, he said that his fingerprints have never been confirmed, as well as his boot print was a size and a half too large for the boot prints collected at Lake Berryessa. His are size 12, those are 10 and a half. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Gareth Penn can take his biometrics, he can roll them up and he can smoke them, because biometrics, I mean, I wear a size 9. Who stops me from wearing a size 12?
Yeah, but these are
Gareth Penn claims he's a size 12. How do we know that he's not, in fact, a size 10 and a half? How do we know that? How can we prove that? How are we able to prove that? This guy,
you got his phone number.
Gareth Penn lives in the realm of ambiguity. He loves ambiguity. He loves he loves taunting with the public. He loves taunting with authorities.
Oh, sure.
So,
I just had to bring that up because Gareth gave you that response during the phone call, and that was like something that he wanted to challenge you with. I mean...
Yeah, well, he never gave me an opportunity to ask him, why does he reveal that the confession letter is written in 623 characters? Now, it's impossible to prove if that confession letter is in factually been written in 623 characters, because as I presented evidence on my channel, the copy that's widely available through the online, through the internet, it does not look like the copy that is the original format of that confession letter. And when I counted that copy that's available through the online, through the forums, there's no way that there are 623 characters available. So I can't prove or disprove that he's telling me the truth. So I had to find out, why is this guy talking about 623 characters? I wanted to know why. There had to be some. See, this is the type of guy I am, Ned. If somebody tells me that there's a number here, I need to find out, why is that number there? What is so special about that number that made this individual be assertive and write that there were 1,623 characters to the letter? So when I looked at pi, as you know, pi being 3.1415926, which in fact the numerical sequence of pi does spell out the word zodiac. When I went into an online pi calculator and I typed in the acronym for Gareth Penn, being GSP, well, I almost fell off my chair, because the acronym GSP is found in pi, in the sequence of pi, 1,623 times.
Oh,
now,
wow.
are you telling me that that's a coincidence?
And by acronym, you mean his initials, GSP?
Absolutely. So Gareth G, Cyril S, Penn P. So I took the acronym GSP, I punched it into a pi sequence numerator, and GSP is found in pi 1,623 times. Now here's the interesting thing as well, and the first occurrence of that of GSP is found at position 12,441. Now you write those numbers down and you take the mirror image of the last three numbers. What's the mirror image of 441, Ed?
441 you said, so that would be 144, 144?
Yep, correct. And where do you find 144?
Oh,
where do you find the numerals 144 in the Zodiac's correspondence? In the Halloween card.
Yeah, I was going to say, we definitely have 14 in the Halloween card, but go on, yeah.
Yeah, because if you look at the Halloween card, you've got 14 written on the hand of the skeleton, and on the other side is written 4 in the 10. So you've got the 14 on the one page, and you've got the number 4 on the other page.
Right,
so you do in fact have the numeral 144. And then the other interesting thing is that if you take the numeral 12 in 12,441, 12 multiplied by 12, or 12 to the square, or to the square power, is in fact 144, because 12 plus 12 is 144. So can you see how another interesting coincidence just popped out of the blue, that a man is writing, telling me that the confessional letter is written 623 letters. There's no ways of me proving that that letter is in fact written in 623 characters, and yet I go into a pi calculator and I type in his acronym for his name, GSP, and all of a sudden it spits out that the acronym GSP is found in pi 1,623 times, not 1,621 or 1,624, but the exact number that it tells me that the confessional letter is written in. How can that be a coincidence? So there has to be something about that confessional letter that links Gareth Penn to the numeral pi. And it is, because Gareth Penn's name does in fact equate pi, because he was born on the 1st of the 1st of 41. So if you take a mathematical calculation of that, you've got pi's first three numbers. You've got 3.14. So this is how this mathematical thing just keeps appearing.
I got the 1-4, but what's the 3? He's born on the 1st of January.
Yeah, 1st of January. So the 1st of 1941.
Right. And where's the 3 in that? I can get the 1 and the 4.
Well, yeah, you've got to add the 1st of the 1st of the 1st, so that gives you 3, and then you've got 1 and 4.
Oh, from
so if you,
41.
So you've got 3.14.
Okay.
I, and the number 9 becomes the letter I. So if you go letter 9 is the letter I, so I 3.14. So he's telling you that his birth date does in fact relate I 3.14.
But I believe you also said something about how the number pi has a connection to the zodiac, to the word zodiac. What's that?
Yeah, because if you take 3.1415926, that does in fact spell out the word zodiac, and that was one of the things that Ray Grant was actually able to provide people over the years. I think Ray Grant actually mentions that in his book, that he's written over the years.
Oh yeah, but I haven't read
The
that. Can
word
you
zodiac
explain?
does in fact equals pi sequence, which is
How does that work out, though?
3.1415926. So when you apply the letters to that sequence, you get the word zodiac.
Oh, you mean because like you have to take two letters that combine themselves and they're like
Correct.
2 and a 6?
So 3 is C, 1 is A, 4 is D, then 15 is O, and so on and so forth until you get the word zodiac.
Yeah. No, that's I mean, even if that
So
is just a
it's interesting.
coincidence,
It's
that
extremely
is
interesting. It's
mind-blowing.
extremely interesting. I mean, this 1623 really blew me away because I just, I had to try and find out why was this guy harping on the number 1623. What was so important that he was telling people that the confession letter down in Riverside was written in 1623 characters. And when I punched in those 3 letters, GSP, into Pi's sequence generator, and it showed me that GSP is found in Pi 1623 times. Well, I almost fell off my chair because to me that's just not a coincidence. So that shows me that there's a definite sequence to the Zodiac killing case that was applied by the man that I believe is responsible, none other than Gareth Penn.
Okay then, Joe. What I would also really want to ask you is how many times have you called Gareth Penn and talked to him?
I've spoken with him. I've spoken with him 3 times, but I've called him 4 times.
Okay, and in the 3 conversations, are all those available on YouTube?
No. Only the one that I was able to upload.
Okay, then what is some good material you can give us from your conversations with Gareth Penn that were not available on YouTube?
Can you repeat that, Ned? You broke up. I couldn't hear what you were asking.
Yeah. What can you share with us from those conversations that you have not uploaded to YouTube?
Not much. There's not much substance in it at all. But I can definitely tell you that when I asked him about his involvement in the Zodiac killing case, there was no denials. But it's not once has he denied being, to me, not once has he denied being the Zodiac killer.
Right, it is really quite shocking. You would think somebody would just say, "No, I'm not. I'm not a serial killer, and here's the reason why." But even I thought that was kind of well, I was kind of disappointed on the part of Gareth Penn, like with all those opportunities you mentioned that he had to deny it. If he isn't, then just say so, right?
Well, it makes sense to me, particularly I never, when I called Gareth Penn, and as you know, that conversation that's on my channel, I never told Gareth Penn that I would be calling him. So, and I also never told him that I was recording the conversation. So Gareth Penn was unaware that I was in fact recording. So I could understand if he wanted to, if he knew that I was uploading the conversation onto YouTube, he could possibly deny it because he knew that other people would be listening to the conversation. But he was only talking to me. So you would think that a guy that's talking to him over the phone and throws it in his face that he's the Zodiac killer, and not once during that conversation, he blatantly told me, "No, I'm not the Zodiac killer. I'm not responsible for murdering a child, a 14-year-old child." And he knows that I blame him for the murder of Nikki Benedict. I mean, that's a serious allegation in the spirit and letter of the law. I'm basically calling the guy a child killer, and not to come out and deny it and then throwing so quickly the number 183 in my face. It was almost like he was ready for what I was about to ask him. And he taunted me, Ned. I could understand that Gareth Penn was taunting me because when he pulled out William Maltenoff's card from his pocket, he knew that somewhere along the line I would be calling him again. Gareth Penn knew, so he had to make sure that he had that card with him to throw it in my face, to rub my boobies in my face as a Zodiac claims. The Zodiac wrote in the letter rubbing the boobies in their faces. So this is exactly what he was doing to me. He was showing me that he knew that I had spoken to William Maltenoff, and he threw that in my face.
Yeah, I mean,
and I wasn't expecting it. So he caught me unaware. He actually caught me unaware, and I'm not embarrassed of saying that on the phone. I didn't know whose number it was until he said to me, "Oh, this belongs to William Maltnoff," and I was like, "Whoa," you know. So I was caught by surprise.
Right, and you
So
said
this was a way of him showing me I'm in control of things. I know exactly what's going on, Joe. Don't think you're in control of things. William Maltnoff has been to interrogate, or has been to interview me, or whatever William Maltnoff has done. So, you know, it was just a way of Gareth Penn telling me I'm in control.
Okay, Joe, I mean, this sounds like some good stuff, and it sounds like you'll be continuing on with your channel. How can people find you on YouTube?
Well, all they need to do is just go to the Zodiac Killer Insight series, and I've uploaded just over 90 odd videos, I think it is. And
do you have any Facebook pages or social media you give out?
Sorry, Ned, I lost you.
Do you have any Facebook pages or social media that you give out?
No, I don't, Ned. I don't use social media at all. I don't have Facebook. I don't have Instagram. I began this YouTube channel. I don't participate in social media because I don't particularly enjoy it. This is my first venture onto the social media phenomenon, if you want to call it that. I've never used social media, and I've done this because this case landed in my lap without me even wanting it for it to land on my lap. I was sitting on the couch and I was watching the movie The Zodiac just came up, and the last bit of the Zodiac, the movie Zodiac, just came up on the screen, and the narrator was reading, you know, the taunt that he said, "Who am I? You know, you've got to try and find me." And I thought, hang on a minute, this sounds interesting. Let me just look into this.
Yeah.
And I was one of those guys that got caught in this Zodiac Killer mystery. And here I am, 5 or 6 years later, discussing it with Ned from BBOR on you know, live on radio, on the phone.
All right, yes, Joe from the Zodiac Killer Insights series. Thank you for being on BBOR. And Joe, do you want to do the until next time?
Yeah. Until next time, keep watching BBOR, and Ned's a great fella, and he provides insightful information, and you need your support, so please subscribe to Ned's channel, and he provides insightful information weekly.
Hey, thanks a lot, Joe. Okay, everybody, until next time.